I'm starting with the take-home message on today's podcast, Kylie. Inside Out 2 is a must-watch. I know that we're months and months and months late here, but as a family, we've just sat down and watched Inside Out 2, and it has blown us away.
Let me catch you up. Riley's officially a teenager now, which means more emotions. Anxiety. Hello. Ennui. Envy. And embarrassment.
Welcome to the Happy Families Podcast. Real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcasts. I'm Justin. I'm here with Kylie, my wife and mum to our 6 kids.
I didn't think they could do any better than Inside Out 1.
I was uninterested in watching it. I feel like we've watched enough Disney movies over the years with our 6 kids. My goodness.
But we sat down with our kids and we watched it a few weeks ago, and our 14-year-old in particular was an absolute blubbering mess by the end of it. And when I dissected it with her, the acknowledgement for her was when Inside Out 1 came out, she was roughly about the same age as Riley.
I need to stop you there. We've got to do some quick maths.
I did say roughly.
Well, Riley has aged 2 to 3 years, and it's taken 9 years for her to do that. So very, very roughly, yeah. She was a little bit younger, and now she's a touch older, and there's been 9 years from 2015 to 2024 for the 2 movies. And again, I just wasn't that interested in it, but all I want to say is wow, what a movie.
Even as an adult, as I sat there and watched it, it was literally like they had an inside view into my brain.
They did such an incredible job. They've really talked to great people, obviously, as they've built this movie. You went back and watched it a second time because I said, we've got to do it on the podcast. We've got to talk about this. Even though we're months and months and months late, we've got to talk about this. You sat down with pen and paper and started taking notes when you watched it the second time
Well,
through.
I may have fallen asleep the first time. Not because the movie was boring, but because I was exhausted.
Just living on fumes. All of our kids, we sat down with three or four of them or something like that, and all of them were blubbering messes. It's good. So let's get into it. I'm going to highlight a couple of things. You're going to add a lot more because you've taken copious notes. Why you need to watch Inside Out 2 and what you'll learn.
What do you think you're doing?
Riley's life is more complex now. It requires more sophisticated emotions than all of you. You just aren't what she needs anymore, Joy.
How dare you, madam?
You can't just bottle us up.
Oh, that's a great idea.
First thing for me, I love the way the film visualizes the construction zone nature of the teenage brain. There are 2 times during childhood where brains literally explode with development and everything, I'm going to say, gets undone and redone. That's not exactly correct, but for our purposes today, it's sufficient. When our children are toddlers, their brain goes through this enormous explosion and everything that was working a certain way shifts, it changes. Same thing happens with adolescence. The film shows headquarters literally under construction. New neural pathways are being formed, old systems are being renovated. And for me, watching this happen, it's such a perfect depiction of what goes on when our adolescents or our young adolescents enter puberty.
I love the way they've built on the story. In their first movie, the take-home message for Joy was recognizing and learning that all emotions, the good and the bad, are important. And in number 2, we're now coming to recognize that all the experiences that we have in life, the good and the bad, make up the beautiful whole. I just think it's such a beautiful insight into the making of us as individuals.
There's some curious parts in the movie where Joy is getting rid of all of the memories that could potentially be bad, all the memories that don't build Riley into a perfect specimen of a human.
Well, Joy's job is to help her feel joy. That's her job. She wants her to be happy all the time. And so the experiences that leave her feeling a little bit sad or just, kind of feeling embarrassed, she doesn't want those ones. She doesn't want them in the front of her brain where she can recall them quickly. She wants them as far back as possible so that Riley can experience joy. That's her job.
Yeah. The thing that I want to talk about most, to me, this is the crux of the film. New emotions come on board. So we see ennui, which is...
Not ennui, ennui.
Ennui. I'm Australian and I'm going to say ennui. There's ennui, which is done so well. So well. There's embarrassment. There's also anxiety. And to me, anxiety is the star of the show. I love the way anxiety comes in and takes control of Riley's brain at a critical juncture in her life. And the perfectly positioned thing to me for anxiety is that everything makes sense when anxiety takes over. Anxiety steps in, starts pushing buttons, and there's a perfectly logical rationale for everything that anxiety encourages Riley to do, whether it's about popularity with friends, whether it's about making the team, whether it's about, it doesn't matter what it's about. Anxiety has got Riley's best interests at heart. And we see, because of anxiety, that Riley makes a number of really smart moves. But we also see that anxiety leads Riley down some unhelpful paths as well.
One of the things that I think the movie depicts so beautifully is the realization that all of our emotions are working together for our good. The challenge that the movie depicts so beautifully is that once anxiety takes over, she's not a team player. She doesn't allow other emotions to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Before she comes on, Joy's the leader. She's the definite leader in the group. But she's able to work with all of the emotions because, number one, she learned how important being angry was, how important being sad was. And so she uses their strengths to help Riley move through her emotions. Once anxiety comes on, with all the energy that she has, she's not interested in anyone else's input. She wants to take over. And she's so beautifully acknowledged in that her job was to keep her safe for the future.
And my job is to protect her from the scary stuff she can't see. I plan for the future. Oh, I can show you. You're going to love this.
Joy's job was about keeping her joyful in the moment and to be mindful of what's been in the past.
This taps in so perfectly as well with adolescent brain development. I mentioned there are two times that the brain explodes. The first one is during toddlerhood. The second one is during adolescence. And this second brain explosion, I mean, toddlers and children, they just don't think about the future. But once we hit adolescence, that's when future planning, strategy thinking, that's when the prefrontal cortex comes on board.
And we don't spend time in the present because we're so worried about the future.
And to tie in with something that I've been saying for over a decade, maybe 2 decades now, when our emotions are high, and we're speaking about all emotions, but specifically emotions like anxiety, our intelligence is diminished. And that's because anxiety takes over. It doesn't let anything else step in. There are two metaphors that I love here. The first is from Dr. Lisa D'Amour. She's one of America's best-known child and adolescent psychologists. She was, I believe, a consultant to Inside Out 2, and her fingerprints are all over it now that I think through this. She says that we should let emotions have a seat at our cognitive board of directors, but they shouldn't chair the board. And when anxiety steps in, emotions go up, intelligence goes down because anxiety starts to chair the board. And through the movie, we see what happens there. She's also got another brilliant metaphor, though. She talks about how when emotions get stirred up and become high, it's like picking up a snow globe and shaking it. And now you can't see the picture in the snow globe clearly because all of the snow's buzzing around. And we see that depicted so beautifully in the movie. After the break, I'm going to share my last big insight, the thing that blew me away. And I know you've got about 14 pages of content that you want to whip through as well. I'm watching Inside Out 2, and one of my favorite things to see in the whole thing, I loved seeing the complexity and the mixed emotions. I loved seeing the social complexity as Riley tried to navigate 2 friend groups. But one of my favorite things was watching the parents struggle with their own emotions and having their own little emotional board of directors going nuts in their brain.
The biggest shifting point in the movie was when all the original emotions had been banished to the back of the brain.
Right.
And there comes a point where Joy recognizes that for the first time, she's willing to acknowledge she doesn't have the answers.
Come on, please. What am I missing?
This is really critical.
Because an adolescent's brain is so much more complex, and their situations are so much more complex than a child's brain.
So she realizes that she doesn't have all the answers, and the other emotions are looking at her to know what to do next.
She's been the leader of the pack for so long.
And she just says,
Maybe this is what happens when you grow up.
you feel less joy.
It's just so melancholy and sad in that moment when she acknowledges that growing up is hard.
But, we know from good science that joy is at the very core of who we're supposed to be. Life is supposed to be joyful. It's just that it can't stay. There's a wonderful saying that I heard from I think it was a rabbi in a book or a talk that I was listening to, a book that I was reading or a talk that I was listening to, who said, you can't stay on top of the mountain. The view is so great at the top of the mountain, but you can't live on top of the mountain. Now, obviously, we're not talking about Australian mountains here. We're talking about the Alps or the Pyrenees. We're talking about the Rocky Mountains or something like that. And we've been to some of those places, and you can't have houses up there. The houses stop in the valley. You can't stay on top of the mountain.
But that was part of the shift for Joy, because she has an explosion in that moment before she has that realization. And she just says to everyone,
Do you know how hard it is to stay positive all the time when all you folks do is complain, complain, complain? Jiminy mother loving toaster strudel.
like she just loses it in that moment because she's exhausted from having to be the one who's in the front seat the whole time.
We're not always supposed to be happy.
And I think that is just it's just so well depicted. But the saving part of the movie, in order for them to actually save the day, they rode an avalanche. I'm going to get emotional. They rode an avalanche of all the bad memories that Joy had thrown into the back of the brain because she didn't want them. It was that avalanche of bad memories that actually restored Riley's true sense of self. Because while ever we feed ourselves with only the positive, we recognize and know it's not our true self. We are those things, but we're also selfish and we're also unkind from time to time, and we're also not loyal to our friends or whatever it is, but we're also beautiful and thoughtful and respectful. They make up the whole picture. And I just love that it was an avalanche of bad memories, an avalanche of difficult, hard moments in time that actually saved her.
Inside Out 2, you can get it on Disney+. Hashtag not sponsored. We just wanted to talk about it. We should have talked about it months ago. We should have watched it months ago. But hey, we're not going to beat ourselves up about it. I definitely think it's worth a couple of watches. And if you can sit down with your kids, regardless of their age, Kylie, it's worth sitting down and talking to them, watching it and having a chat about what the movie taught them.
And even if the kids don't want to watch it, you should.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't have to watch Disney movies just with the kids. You're allowed to watch them on your own.
You might actually get a bit more out of it.
Such a good show. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Hey, we'd love for you to let us know what you think about the pod. Can you jump onto whatever platform you're listening to? Leave us a 5-star rating and review. We get to feel awesome because you love what we do. You get a warm fuzzy for doing something helpful, and we get to reach more people, which makes a big difference in their lives. It takes you about 30 seconds. 5-star ratings make all the difference in helping the podcast get out there. If you'd like more information and resources to make your family happier, please visit us at happyfamilies.com.au. Back tomorrow on the Happy Families podcast.
Wow, those guys are jerks.